In this part of today's photography review session, we're going to be looking at landscape photographers. Hello everyone, my name is Jakub and I'm here to welcome you back to another of our photography review sessions here at Clever Photographer. For those who don't know me, I'm a landscape and hospitality photographer based in West Sussex in the south of England. Now this is the idea we came out a few weeks ago where we started to review our photographers' pictures and photos, and this is our third week. Now this week we had over 25 photographers submitting their pictures, sending us over 150 photos. Unfortunately, we are not able to process all of them during these shows, so what we do is we take two of the best pictures from each of the photographers and we review them throughout the show. Now because we have that many pictures, we decided to divide the show between the different photography styles. So in this first part, we're going to be looking at landscape photographers. So without any further ado, let's start right there. And here we are, we have 10 landscape photographers to look at, so let's jump straight into it. And here we are, we have 10 landscape photographers to start with, so let's jump straight into it. So first of all, we have two pictures from Carolyn here. So we have two kind of sunset sunrise photos, both of them in a square crop. And as usual, we're going to be looking at your technique, we're going to be looking at the artistic feel, and we're going to end it up by looking at your post-processing. So technically, let's have a look at the two pictures. Let's see if we have any details. And we have, so you have used Nikon Z50 with your 18 to 70 millimeters lens. That's great. And let's have a look. So out of the two, I actually like this one a bit more because it has a little bit more details and there is a bit more happening when it comes to the technical part. I can see that we have lovely details in front, and let's have a look at the back. Because of the size of the picture, I can't see completely, but the picture seems to be nice and sharp, so it's all good there. The sun is there, it's not too blown out, so the exposure is working quite well. It's also a great time of the day to go out and photograph, and that equally goes to this picture right here. It's also a very, very lovely picture. Obviously, the sun seems to be just a little bit more blown out, a little bit more exposed than on the first picture, but the drama is still there. The things you were focusing on the foreground, the background seems to be a bit more blurry, but in general it looks all good. I think looking at your camera and lens, the technical part is fine. It's more to be looking at the artistic part of the photo. So we have two photos. As I say, I prefer this one simply because there is just a bit more happening there, there is a bit more drama, there is a bit more texture, although this one is just as lovely. Preferably me, I love golden hour, sunset, sunrise photos, so this definitely works. I think artistically, first of all, it's a shame that they are both squares. It in some way works on the first one because you have the sun almost in the center, so that works very well for the square crops, but when it comes to square crop and your main elements being on each side of the picture, it's starting to lose the little bit of the balance. It's also a shame that maybe there is not the rest of the coast here, because that could have actually created a really lovely leading line. So I think it would be quite interesting to see the raw file and see what else was there and what we could do with it. As again, you were there at the right time of the day. I would be quite interested to know where are these locations, but in generally it's a lovely idea, and either it's at your home or it's on holidays, it's a lovely idea. Moving on to post-processing, it's a little bit over the top. I'm looking at the colors, I'm thinking looking at the purple here and then blue and then all the kind of clarity and the details pushed. I think it's a shame. I think for picture like this, I would go more for kind of blurry, not blurry, more for glowy kind of style with much less clarity, keeping some kind of details out of it. Here it works a little bit more. This is the kind of style I like. I think this is a bit more dreamy. I think especially this picture, I think it would be nice if you would kind of center the horizon, which can be really easily done, you know, just to kind of turn it and see if that would work just a little bit more. So obviously that helps just a little bit here. I think because the sun is almost in the center, it would benefit if you want to keep the same square crop to crop it in a way that the sun is in the center. So maybe something like this at least. And right away we get much stronger composition. This one is much more natural. When it comes to editing, I think I prefer this one. It would be interesting to know where are your whites, and they're quite good. They're not too burned out. I think if you would push the highlights down a little bit, you would maybe almost get to 0. So there is a lot of details in the sun. Well done on that. And on this one, yeah, the straight line, again, because of this part kind of missing the leading line, it's almost unnecessary that it's there. So instead of the square crop, I would maybe try to see if I could do something something like this, maybe. And that to me seems to be like much stronger composition. Again, looking at the colors, just see if you can come out maybe with something a bit more natural. But in overall, great effort. My first impression, I love the pictures. You were there at the right time of the day and it just worked. So very well done on that. So moving on, another photographer, we're looking at John. And he sent us one photo, so let's have a look at that. And let's have a look. Absolutely stunning scenery. I love the photo. Even though it was captured during the day or maybe early morning, it works very well. Obviously the water is nice and clear, so there is a lovely reflection of the skies in the water, and it's beautiful. So let's have a look at it from the technical point of view, if we have any details. Here you use the Nikon Z6 with the Nikkor 24 to 70. Looking at the shot, ISO 160, f8.0. Yeah, lovely technically, very well done. I can see lots of details in the foreground. Let's have a look at the mountain, as well as in the background. That I think works very well for this scene. Obviously the natural light. I would be interested to know when did you shoot it, if it was kind of early morning or later in the afternoon, but in some way the daylight sky and then the shadows kind of add a drama, so it works quite well here and I quite like it. Moving on the artistic part, yeah, the composition seems to be very good, although some parts in the foreground here a little bit distract the actual picture. So I think if there would be more water, it would be just a little bit more clear. When it comes to the cropping, you almost kind of halfway through, which works very well as well. So it's a lovely photo. I would be quite interested to know where did you capture it, or what's the location, and if there was any possibility to come a little bit later on when there was maybe like a golden hour or sunset or sunrise, and just see if you could do more from there. But in general, artistically talking, it's really well done. Talking about post-processing, not much more I would do here, to be honest, because you kept it very natural and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is a lovely kind of vignette happening, and yeah, you could work a little bit more with something like a dodge and burn just to add a little bit more drama and a little bit more interested in different parts of the photo, almost like during the black and white photography, you know, just to kind of again add some parts where there would be just a bit more light and some parts where there would be less, you know, just to add a bit more interested in different parts. It's a kind of technique where you can add more contrast by just making some parts brighter and some parts darker. So anyway, I think you've done very well. Well done on this picture, and we hope to see more from you in the upcoming weeks. All right, moving on the next photographer, we have a Laurie here. Let's have a look what we got. So we have this picture, which is very, very lovely. Obviously, nice panoramic scene. Starting with the technical part of the photo. So we have this kind of foreground, which is nice and sharp, and the trees seems to be nice and sharp as well, including the mountains at the back. So in general, lovely light. Shame, obviously, this was during the day, so this scene would look even better and nicer if you would visit it during the golden hour or sunset and sunrise, even though I completely understand it's sometimes impossible, but in general it looks very good. Let's have a look if we have any details of the photo. Unfortunately we don't, so I can't really tell you when it comes to the gear if there would be any suggestion. Moving on the artistic part of the photo, it's a lovely choice of location. I think it's stunning. I think it's quite clever what you've done with the foreground here, and then the middle ground and background works very well. even though the mountains obviously would be even nicer if they would be a little bit higher, but that would depend if you could go up and down with your camera and see if you could do a bit more. Again, I can repeat the same thing about the time of the day. If there would be some clouds or texture in the sky, this picture would go from 50 to 75 or even higher. It would work even better, but it works very well. Yeah, you could then see how the raw file look, if you could do a little bit different crop, if you could get maybe the high line in the middle, which generally works a little bit better for reflection. So I'm thinking about something like this, for example. It's just a composition rule we use. So anytime we use this kind of reflection, we try to keep the reflection in the middle, and it just works better for the viewer's eyes. But what you done works very well as well. The advantage of cropping it like this is again that we get rid of this little bit boring sky without any texture. It's just a gradient. So that's something what you could do, but otherwise it's very lovely. When it comes to post-processing, I'm seeing kind of halos around different parts of the pictures, and that sometimes happens when we really push the highlights and shadow up and down, when we push the whites and blacks. So just kind of be careful about that. Let's have a look if we have. No, everything seems to be balanced there, but still you see, I'm sure you know what I mean, especially here in the water and so on. Just keep an eye on that. The picture look a little bit too blue for me. There is lots of blue and green happening. I would be interested if maybe we could add a little bit of the warmth, and if it wouldn't help, it's just to see when you're editing your raw files. Also, everything is nice and straight, only with the crop, as I was saying. As I was showing you, you could do something like this, but in overall, great job and well done. Thank you very much. And if you have any pictures, make sure you shoot them over so we can check them out as well. Moving on to the next photographer, we have Majed here, and he sent us few pictures with a long exposure. I have picked two of them. So we have this one and this one. And I have to say that I prefer this one to the other one, simply because when it comes to light rays, and this is a great example of it, when there is too much of it, it's just too much. The eyes don't know where to go, the viewer don't know where to look, and it just gets overly very confusing. But we'll get to it. In technical part of capturing the picture, you use Canon 700D with your 50mm lens 1.8. I think technically you've done a great job. Obviously f22 to get this lovely starburst on the lamps, which work very well here. You got lovely light rays, lots of them, and then you kept the parts you wanted to keep sharp. They are nice and sharp. So in technical part, you've done super well here, and there is nothing to add to it. In artistic part, again, between the two of them, although you've done everything right in this picture, I think it's a bit overwhelming for a viewer, so it's a little bit of a shame. I think if there would be maybe more of the road, we could get at least some kind of longer leading line and some kind of main subject to look at, where here it's just kind of disappeared too quickly. On this picture, because it's a bit more monotone, we have lost all the golden, and really what we get is the red and green. It just works a little bit better in this case. So this is my preferred shot. I think it works super well, and I think you've done a great job on this one. Moving on to post-processing, again, I think you've done well here. It's very natural. It's the right saturation. I think maybe you could straighten it up a little bit here with the posts to see if that would maybe help, but it's not really a big thing. It's just some little bits you could basically do just to see if that would help on your raw files when you do the editing. Otherwise, I think it's great. You have your kind of dodge and burn quite well done, so well done on that. And thank you very much for joining us. If you have more pictures, make sure you shoot them over to us so we can review them in the upcoming weeks. Moving on to the next photographer, we have a picture from Michael, and let's have a look at them. So we actually got two pictures, one here and second one here. Again, looking at the picture, just as a quick reminder for all the photographers out there, I completely understand why you guys use watermarks, especially in today's social media and online world. But when you send your pictures for review, make sure you remove any kind of text and any logos and watermarks from the photos. Simply because when I review the picture, and generally any of my colleagues, when we review the picture, we really want to focus just on the art itself. We don't want to be looking at your fonts and logos and so on. So just for the next time. And then we have two pictures. So one obviously during the day with the kind of pole and some net here or fence, and then we have a square crop, heavily vignetted of kind of sunset. To be honest, Michael, those two shots are a great example of if you have to explain what's on the picture, it doesn't really work. This, I'm sure, has some kind of meaning to you, and it may be supposed to make you feel a certain way. It's maybe from a special location, but because I've never been there, I have no idea what it's about. It's just picture I would capture anywhere around, like my parents' place, and I just really don't know what to think about it. Although obviously you work very well with your camera here. You have everything in front in the focus and everything behind blurred, although already the fence is blurred as well, so I'm thinking this is the main subject. Moving on, the next one, from the technical point of view, it's almost like you were trying to do some kind of silhouette, which works quite well. The light is quite nice, it's the right time of the day. But that's about as much as I can say about the technical part, because there are no details about your camera or anything, and because of the size of the photo I can't really say much, although the tree seems to be in a nice focus and the background seems to be kind of in a different depth of field, and it seems to be a bit more blurry, so that works. But from the artistic part, again, I'm not really sure what to think about this picture. I'm not sure about the crop. I think this is way too dominant, although it's on your lower third. And I'm just not sure what you were meaning with this. So maybe you can give me a hint, and maybe we can talk about it next time. And then on this picture, square crop generally is quite tricky crop to handle, unless you're doing something what is super well centered, which in this case isn't. Obviously you have your tree on the side, so it's kind of imbalanced. Then there is this super heavy vignette, which I'm also not sure what it's about. And then the sunset isn't the strongest sunset I ever seen. You have really nice detail in this part of the area, and then it just kind of disappear in a purple and blue. So shame on that one. Although I get the idea, I'm sure it was lovely. It doesn't really work when it comes to kind of fine art photography. So still, maybe it's next time to try something else. Maybe you have it in a raw file, so we could look at it next time and see if it would work better. But these two pictures are probably more important than for you, and we would need to know a little bit more about them. Moving on to Robert. Robert sent us picture from kind of desert situation, and it's a lovely photo. Technically, it seems to be quite well done. Let's have a look. All seems to be sharp, including the mountain. So let's have a look if we have any details for the camera. We don't. That's a shame, because we could know a little bit more. So from technical, everything is sharp. The exposure seems to be fine, obviously using natural light and all sorts. You know what to do with the camera, so that's well done. I think a little bit a shame of the time of the day, because regardless what the sun was doing at the time, it didn't really create much of a contrast for us. The mountain as the back isn't super well lit, so we can't really say, and the sky doesn't really have much detail in it, other than some noise. So I would be quite interesting to know what was the ISO you were shooting this with. I would assume it was a bit higher, so then it's interesting to know if you were using tripod or not. Moving on to artistic bit, it works, it's nice. The kind of abandoned village town feel of it works quite well for me. Again, if there would be more details in the sky, it would be a bit more interesting. I think you have a lovely foreground and the kind of middle ground and the background. I think it's quite well composed, it's balanced, and in general it works very well. So really, you have the location right, you have your technique right, it's just the time of the day. And because of the time of the day, the picture generally losing a contrast. There is not much interest created by contrast, and the contrast is one of the most interesting part, what makes the photography from this to another level. So just kind of think about that. Post-processing, yeah, you could do some more kind of interest with something like a gradient to create a bit more kind of crop vignetting, maybe something more like this, and again similarly from the top. Just to kind of guide the eyes of the viewer in the center of the photo. You can see how that starts to work right away. I wouldn't really do any other vignetting. I think everything is straight, so just to play around with it. And that will all comes with choosing the right time of the day and choosing the places where there's a bit more contrast, either created by shadows or colors or anything like that. But in general, it's a lovely photo. It's a lovely idea. You have lots of things right, so well done on that. And make sure you send us more pictures in the future. Moving on the next photographer, we have Steiner, who sent us 2 pictures. So let's have a look. There is one here and one here. So we have this lovely boat with the like a little harbor area, and then we have this valley with some wild sky and person walking there. So from technical point of view, all seems to be sharp. Let's have a look if we have any details. We don't, about the camera or how it was shot. On this one neither. So from technical point, let's have a look. The details seem to be right. It's a lovely time of the day because obviously of the kind of dramatic scene, it creates lots of nice contrast. I quite like that. On this one equally, there are some lovely textures in the sky. There are some different shades of light in the actual valley, so that works very well. So you obviously know what you're doing with your camera. So let's move on the artistic part. When it comes to artistic part, I think it's a little bit of a shame that it's all kind of falling down, so it's not really straight. But obviously this as a foreground works quite well, although I would quite like it to be a little bit more dominant. I think it's a bit imbalanced as it falling off, and I think maybe that is also happening because of how it isn't straight. So let's see if we can help to it just a little bit. Maybe something like this. But the foreground works very well. The background is lovely. I think it's a great time of the day. Shame the water bit was a bit kind of wrinkly, so there was not that much reflection. I wonder if you could use maybe a longer exposure and see if some of the wrinkles could disappear. It's just something to try and think about for the next time. On this picture, yeah, there is like a lovely leading line here. So your foreground with a little path here works quite well. There is the person. I generally use a person and people in a landscape picture like this just to highlight certain size or shape of the objects. Here the person doesn't really add anything to it. She isn't walking anywhere enough, so I'm not sure if she or he has to be there, but the rest of the picture is absolutely lovely. So the foreground, middle ground works very well. Then the mountains with the different light and the texture in the background is superb. So for me personally, I like this one a little bit more than the first one, but they are both great pictures. Looking at the post-processing, both of them, this one we already straightened, so you saw where I thought was a little weakness here. I think the cropping is quite well done. I think there is lovely contrast created by different shadows and colors. I think it's a little bit pushed towards the clarity and details, so there is lots of textures happening in the sky and some part of the photos, which I think in a picture like this, I would more go on the kind of glowy, dreamy part, where there would be more glow in the sky and less details, because as you can see, there is lots of details in the mountains, there is lots of details on the water, and there is lots of details on the foreground. And when you add to it the sky as well, it's just becoming details everywhere. So there is again no contrast. Where if you would have less details in the sky and maybe the water would be less blurry, if you would use the long exposure as I suggest to you, you would get a little bit more contrast created through the post-processing. Here, I think it's better, except the sky again. I think everything works. I think it's well edited. I think there's some dodge and burn, which works really well here. But again, the sky is, for me, way too detailed. And especially when it's in such a distance, it's almost getting kind of unnatural feel. As you have all of this distance to look at, and then suddenly there is the sky, which is like super well detailed and defined. But in general, I think you're doing very well. I think the pictures are lovely and well done on what you've done. So please make sure that you send us more pictures in the future, because we would love to see them. Moving on to the next photographer, we have a Stevie Brooks, and he sent us several photos. And I have to say that out of the pictures I've seen this week, those are some of my most favorite, and they are my favorite. I think they work super well. I picked 2 of them. One with the little kind of pier or under the pier view, which is very, very lovely, and one from the little church with the foreground here. I think what you're doing, Stevie, it works very well. Well done on that. Technically, I think it's well handled. There is lots of details. Obviously you're using your Nikon D500. It's a shame. It almost seems that you didn't have a tripod. Otherwise, I don't know why would you go for ISO 1600, where in this situation you went 200. So obviously I understand that you want to kind of push and to be able to do it handheld, but that's maybe just one thing I would be thinking of. Otherwise, the light is great. It's a great time of the day. On this one, again, great choice. There is lovely details in the sky. There is absolutely beautiful long exposure used for the waves, and I'm just on this picture, obviously with the way it was shared, I don't see that much of the details on the pier itself, but I think it's just the way it was shared with us, so I'm not too worried about it. It worked quite well. Moving on to artistic part of your pictures, this works very, very well. It's lovely, dreamy. It's almost like a cover for a book, and it's great. There's not much I can add to it. It's a lovely crop. You have your foreground and then the middle ground and the moon and the trees, and there's a lovely glow on a church, so this works very well. And then moving on the pier, great, lovely sunset or sunrise. The light is there, the colors are there, then there is the lovely kind of smoothness created with the waves, and it just works very well. So well done. It's a great picture, Stevie, and make sure you send us more in the future because we would absolutely love to see them. Moving on the next landscape photographer, we have Sue, and we got 2 pictures from her. So let's have a look. So we have this lovely village here with the church and with a lovely reflection, and then we have another church or cathedral here. So 2 different pictures to look at. From technical point of view, let's see if we have any details. And you're using Panasonic. I wonder if this is a phone actually. Panasonic DC TZ7. I've never heard about this one, but either way, they are lovely captures. So from a technical point, let's have a look. Yeah, everything seems to be nice and sharp. It's a little bit a shame of the time of the day because the sky and the light in general seems to be a bit boring, but that's the way it is. Sometimes you have to come back to different places and spaces several times to get the most out of them. And then the cathedral itself, I think the stuff is sharp. I can't really judge the time of the day, but it seems like a daylight, and we'll touch more on this during the post-processing and artistic part of this review. So on this picture, this is the one I prefer more. Artistically, it's a lovely idea. I think it works very well. I'm not sure about this part of the picture. I think it doesn't need to be there, and it's quite distracting, to be honest. And same at this part of the picture, because really, if I do the crop here, just to show you what I have on my mind, it would be more something like this, I think, and that would create much stronger composition. Maybe something like this. Maybe we could have removed more of the top, and suddenly you have a much better picture. Obviously we could remove some parts here and here, but it's much more balanced. Your reflection becomes all the way through and in the middle of the photo, which works very well when it comes to composition. We have lost these kind of big trees here, which were distracting anyway, and this picture like this works much better for me. This picture, in overall artistically, doesn't really work for me. I think this whole part is just distracting, although I understand that you were maybe not able to move in different direction, but it's very distracting, including the kind of light going through it. I think you would have to get much closer. You could maybe go on the path and use the path as a leading light over the cathedral and see if you could do more there. It's just not a great picture, to be honest. Moving on the post-processing, there are lovely colors on it. I don't know if you've done anything with it or if it was done in the actual camera itself, but it has a lovely colors. You saw what we done with the cropping, what you could do. You could do some more vignetting just to kind of close the picture and add more attention towards the center of it. So maybe something like this, and then you could add more attention by adding some exposure in the center of your photo. So maybe something like this, and just play around with it. On the other one, I'm not sure what's the reason why you use this kind of filter or the look, because it's not really black and white. It's not really, it's kind of washed out look, which doesn't necessarily work. I think there is a a really high ISO on it used means there is lots of noise, or if it isn't, I'm not sure why your sky has so much noise in it, and the rest of the picture too. Either way, I think there is more to do with this picture, which I think works very well. Anyway, Sue, make sure that you look at it and send us more pictures so we can have a look at them and tell you what we think in the future. But thank you very much for joining us. And we have a final photographer when it comes to our landscape part. So we have a look at the pictures from Vanessa. And Vanessa sent us one photo. And we have this kind of path leading towards the end with the sky over it. So, Vanessa, shame that you sent us only one picture because we cannot really judge your overall skills on this one. Let's see if we have any details. We don't. I completely get where you're trying to go with this photo, but overall, it doesn't 100% work. The leading line is a great idea, and me personally, I love it. I think the paths in the forest and the roads work very well, but I think overall you have a bit too much of a sky. It seems to me that you use sky replacement because you can really notice it here on the power lines, because at some parts they are disappearing behind the sky. So I would either remove them completely or work more on my sky replacement technique. I think the time of the day isn't really right. I think it's a bit too much of a sun. I think it's a bit too much during the day. I think this would look much better during the evening or golden hour or sunset or sunrise. I think it would work better if you would be a little bit more there and you would actually look at the path as your leading line compared to the side like this. So from technical part, I think everything is in detail. Yes, I think the light and the time of the day isn't a perfect choice. I think moving on the artistic part, as I told you, I think the sky, even though you went for the leading lines, so I think in general you have the idea. It's just the actual how you do it isn't there yet. So yes, leading lines, interesting sky. I think that all works, but I think it's a wrong time of the day. I think the composition could be stronger if the road would be in the middle. I think less of the sky, definitely looking at the leading lines and just looking in general, maybe trying to get inspired from somewhere else. If you had moment, make sure you head to website like px500.com and just simply in the search bar type path, and you will get lots of inspiration to see what can be done, and then maybe you can copy it, try to use it, and then create your own style from there. But anyway, thank you very much for sending us your photo, Vanessa. We really enjoy it, and if you have more, make sure you send them to us so we can check them out next week. And for all of you, the same. If you have a moment and you have pictures you would like to review, make sure you send them to us. Make sure you visit our Facebook page at Clever Photographer, where every week we announce on how to do this. Also make sure you visit our website cleverphotographer.com. Scroll all the way down. There is a little newsletter registration, and when you register to it, you will get the reminders about our reviews and lots of other stuff we do for our photographer community. Thank you very much for today, and that's Jakub out.